The synthetic coffee in Neo-Veridia always tasted like burnt copper and regret. Elara Vance sat in the corner booth of the Rusty Gear, a subterranean cafe that smelled perpetually of ozone and stale synth tobacco. Outside the fogged, reinforced glass, the city's eternal acid rain drummed a relentless rhythm. Elara kept her head down, scrolling mindlessly through a cracked datapad. She was ordinary, a mid-level archivist for a monolithic tech firm, scraping by in a city that ate the weak. Or so she thought. A shadow fell over her table, blocking the neon glare of the street signs. A man slid into the booth opposite her. He wore a heavy trench coat soaked with rain, his face obscured by the low brim of a worn fedora and a high collar. His eyes, however, caught the dim light. They were an unnatural, piercing silver. Elara's hand subtly drifted toward the stun baton in her pocket. This booth is taken. The stranger did not move. He leaned in, the air growing suddenly freezing around him. When he spoke, his voice was a low, urgent gravel that cut through the background hum of the cafe. They already know who you are. Elara froze. Excuse me? I think you have the wrong person. There is no time for the illusion of ignorance, Elara, he whispered, glancing at the cafe's entrance. The veil is broken. The Syndicate has found the anomaly. They have found the Zeonix. Before Elara could ask what a Zeonix was, the reinforced glass of the Rusty Gear shattered inward in a deafening explosion of light and sound. Smoke and pulverized glass filled the air. Screams erupted from the few patrons inside. Through the gaping hole in the wall stepped 3 figures clad in seamless obsidian armor. Their visors glowed with a predatory crimson light. Syndicate enforcers. The stranger moved with terrifying speed. He grabbed Elara's wrist, hauling her over the booth just as a volley of plasma fire incinerated the synthetic leather where she had been sitting a millisecond before. "Move!" he barked, dragging her toward the kitchen doors. "Who are you? Who are they?" Elara screamed over the hiss of melting plastcrete. "My name is Kaylin," he said, kicking open the kitchen doors and firing a barrage from a sleek silver side-arm back into the dining area. "And they are here to harvest you." They bolted through the kitchen, alarming the culinary droids, and burst out into the back alley. The rain instantly soaked them, cold and acidic. Elara wrenched her arm free. "I'm an archivist! I organize data! I have 0 credits, no enemies, and I certainly don't know what a Zeonix is." Kaylin turned to her, his silver eyes flashing with an ancient intensity. "Your memories of being an archivist were implanted 19 years ago to hide you. Look at your hands, Elara." Adrenaline coursing through her veins, Elara looked down. Her breath hitched. Beneath her pale skin, a network of veins was glowing. Not with blood, but with a brilliant, pulsing sapphire luminescence. The raindrops hitting her hands were vaporizing instantly, suspended in a localized anti-gravity field around her skin. What is happening to me?" "Your dormant cycle is ending," Kaylin said grimly, as the sound of heavy metallic boots echoed from the cafe kitchen. "The chosen one is awakening. Now run." They descended deep into the Undercity, far below the neon-drenched spires of Neo-Veridia, into the forgotten catacombs where even the Syndicate's surveillance network couldn't reach. Elara's hands continued to pulse with the strange blue light, a rhythm that synced perfectly with her racing heartbeat. They finally stopped in a derelict subway station, the rusted carriages long abandoned to time. Kaylin collapsed onto a bench, clutching his side. A glancing plasma burn seared his coat. Elara, trembling, knelt beside him. "Let me help you." "Do not touch me while you are surging," Kaylin warned, holding up a hand. "The Zeonix energy is raw, unrefined. You could vaporize me." Elara pulled back, wrapping her glowing hands in her jacket. "Explain. Now. What am I?" Kaylin took a deep breath, the pain evident on his face. He began to outline a truth that shattered her entire reality. The foundation of reality. The universe is not just held together by gravity and electromagnetism, but by an ethereal web of cosmic energy called Zeon. The Syndicate's greed. The ruling Syndicate discovered how to siphon this energy centuries ago, building their empire by bleeding the universe dry, causing planetary decay across the galaxy. The anomaly. The universe has a defense mechanism. Once every 10 millennia, the Zeon energy coalesces into a living vessel, a human avatar meant to balance the scales. The title. You are not just a person, Elara, Kaelin said softly. You are the Zeonix, the chosen one, the living embodiment of cosmic balance. Elara shook her head, tears mixing with the grime on her face. No, I remember my mother. I remember growing up in Sector 4. Implants. A necessary cruelty orchestrated by the Order of the Veil, my order, to hide you until you matured, Kaelin replied. But the Syndicate's scanners detected a massive energy spike tonight. The illusion is over. If I'm this weapon, why do I feel so terrified? Because power without control is just a target, and the Syndicate intends to capture you, plug you into the core, and power their empire for eternity. To escape the planet, they needed an off-world transport, which meant crossing the Null Zone, a massive, irradiated sector of the Undercity where all technology and synthetic magic failed. As they crossed the threshold into the pitch-black sector, Kaelin's sidearm powered down with a dying whine. The distant hum of the city ceased. It was a graveyard of silence. We are blind here, Kaelin whispered, drawing a pair of curved physical steel blades. And we are not alone. The Nullhounds, mutated beasts that feed on bioelectricity, roam these tunnels. It didn't take long. From the shadows, guttural snarls echoed against the damp concrete. A dozen pairs of yellow, glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, circling them. The beasts were massive, sleek, and hungry. Stay behind me, Kaelin commanded, gripping his blades. The hounds lunged. Kaelin fought with lethal grace, but he was injured, and the hounds were too fast. One bypassed him, its jaws snapping toward Elara's throat. In that moment of sheer terror, Elara didn't think. She felt. She felt the pulsing rhythm in her veins, the suppressed energy screaming to be let out. She threw her hands forward. A shockwave of pure, blinding sapphire energy erupted from her palms. The blast illuminated the cavernous subway in brilliant daylight. The Nullhound was caught mid-air and disintegrated into harmless blue ash. The concussive force threw the remaining hounds backward, sending them fleeing into the depths of the tunnels in absolute terror. Elara fell to her knees, gasping for air. The glow in her hands dimmed slightly, stabilizing into a steady, beautiful luminescence. Kaelin looked at her, all replacing the pain on his face. You didn't just discharge energy, Elara. You commanded it. The Zeonix recognizes its master. They reached the extraction point, an abandoned hangar bay housing a smuggled starship. But as the heavy blast doors ground open, a chilling voice echoed through the massive chamber. Magnificent. The legends did not do it justice. Floodlights snapped on, blinding them. Standing on the loading ramp of the ship was High Lord Vane, one of the supreme leaders of the Syndicate. He was encased in heavy, gold-trimmed power armor. Surrounding him were 50 elite enforcers, their weapons trained squarely on Elara and Kaelin. You led us right to her, Kaelin, Vane sneered. We tracked your biometric distress beacon the moment you were injured. Kaelin cursed, stepping in front of Elara. Run, Elara. Blow a hole in the ceiling and fly, climb, whatever you have to do. No, Vane commanded. Subdue the Protector. Cage the Zeonix. The enforcers opened fire, not with lethal plasma, but with graviton nets and neural whips. Kaelin deflected what he could, but a neural whip wrapped around his leg. A massive jolt of electricity sent him crashing to the floor, paralyzed. Kaelin! Elara screamed, rushing toward him, but a graviton field slammed into her, pinning her to the ground with the weight of a dying star. Vane walked slowly down the ramp, drawing a metallic syringe glowing with dark synthetic energy, a siphon drive. Do not struggle, child. You are going to power a golden age for my people. Your sacrifice will be eternal. He knelt beside her, the needle inching toward her neck. Elara felt the crushing weight of the gravity field, the cold dread of failure. She looked at Kaylin, who was watching her with desperate, apologizing eyes. No, Elara thought. I refuse. Deep within her core, the Zeon energy didn't just pulse, it ignited. Elara stopped fighting the gravity field and instead reached out to the energy holding her down. She could suddenly see the mechanics of the universe, the delicate strings of physics, gravity, and light. What is happening to the containment field? Vane demanded, stepping back as his armor's HUD began flashing critical warnings. Elara closed her eyes. I am not a battery, she thought. I am the storm. Her eyes snapped open, and the irises were gone, replaced by twin pools of swirling galaxies. Boom! The graviton field shattered like glass. A pillar of sapphire light erupted from Elara, piercing straight through the reinforced ceiling of the hangar and shooting miles into the sky of Neo-Veridia, a beacon of defiance visible to the entire world. She floated inches off the ground. The air crackled with immense power. Fire! Kill her! Vane shrieked, his composure entirely gone. The enforcers unleashed a torrent of plasma. Elara simply raised a hand. The plasma bolts halted in mid-air, suspended in time. With a flick of her wrist, she redirected the energy, sending it harmlessly crashing into the hangar walls. She turned her gaze to the enforcers. She didn't want to kill. That was the Syndicate's way. Instead, she pulsed the Zeonix energy outward in a silent wave. As the blue light washed over the soldiers, their weapons fused together, their armor powered down, and their neural implants short-circuited. They collapsed into unconsciousness. Vane, terrified, turned to run up the ramp of the ship. Elara vanished, instantly reappearing in front of him. The era of the Syndicate feeding on this universe is over, her voice echoed, layered with the resonance of 1,000 voices. She placed a glowing finger against Vane's armored chest. The golden armor instantly rusted, decayed, and turned to dust, leaving the High Lord scrambling backward in his undersuit, weeping in terror. Tell your masters, Elara commanded, hovering above him. The Zeonix has returned. She descended, the massive surge of power receding back into her body until her feet touched the floor and her eyes returned to their normal color. She ran to Kaylin, placing her hands over his wounds. A soft, warm light flowed from her palms, knitting his flesh and purging the paralysis from his nervous system. He coughed, sitting up, and looked at the devastation around them. By the stars! Elara offered him a hand, pulling him to his feet. Come on, we have a ship to steal. The smuggled starship broke through the atmosphere of Neo-Veridia, leaving the acidic clouds and the neon-lit dystopia behind. For the first time in her life, Elara saw the unfiltered expanse of the cosmos. Millions of stars burned against the velvet blackness of space. To anyone else, it was just a beautiful view. To Elara, it was a tapestry. She could see the faint, shimmering threads of Zeon connecting every star, every planet, every living thing. It was breathtaking. Kaylin walked into the cockpit, leaning heavily on a cane, but looking better than he had in days. He stood beside her, looking out at the stars. The Syndicate will hunt you to the ends of the universe, Kaylin said quietly. Vane survived. The High Council knows what you can do now. You are the most wanted being in existence. Elara didn't look away from the stars. The terrified archivist who had been drinking synthetic coffee just hours ago was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood her destiny. Let them hunt, Elara said, a quiet, resolute smile playing on her lips. They think they are hunting a fugitive. They don't realize I'm hunting them next. She placed her hand on the hyperspace throttle. As she pushed it forward, the stars elongated into streaks of brilliant white light. Elara Vance was dead. The chosen One Zeonix had finally awakened, and the universe would never be the same.